Hey everybody, Ben here for the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to the monthly meta. This is where we get together and we have a look at two things in competitive Blood Bowl: what's legal and what's lethal. So we're going to have a look and see what you need to play Blood Bowl. So if you're just starting out in Blood Bowl, you're just coming back, you're just going to join a league or start going to tournaments, we're going to cover everything you need and everything you might want and why it's fun to have. And then secondly, we're going to look at the last period's worth of NAF tournament results. So the NAF is a player association for Blood Bowl, and we can kind of put together and extrapolate from the data who's doing well, so what teams you're likely to see and which teams are performing very well at the moment. So first things first, let's start out with what's legal in Blood Bowl. We've changed it up ever so slightly from normal, but we're going to start off with here. So what do you need to play Blood Bowl? The first thing you need is the core rulebook. Now the core rulebook covers, I think, 21 teams and 24 star players. It's got all the rules you'll need to play the game, all the rules you'll need to go to a tournament. It explains how to build a tournament roster, and it also covers the entire league special rules. So whether you are playing friendly at home with some friends, casually, pickup games, playing in league, going to a league, going to be going to a tournament, basically everything you need is in the core rulebook. Now that is for the first 21 teams. We'll cover the extra teams in a second, but the majority of what you need is there. All the rules are in there, but there is an FAQ that comes out from Games Workshop every May, every November. They'll get together and they will clarify some of the rules that are a bit questionable. Sometimes they'll change some things that is interesting, and sometimes they'll change things for game balance as well. So in May this year or November last year, they changed a couple of tiers for teams, and they changed the cost of a couple of star players who were doing a little bit too well, should we say. So definitely worth having a look at that, but that is fully available for download, no cost, no nothing, and I think I've put it in the link below in the comments as well, so you can go and grab it if you're just starting out. Now, before we go into other stuff that you can get, there is a Blood Bowl Almanac that was released at the end of last year, and we're fully expecting to have one this year as well. The almanacs tend to include everything from the expansions in that year, so the team rosters, the star players that were released, and any special rules and things that landed in White Dwarf. But really, the core rulebook and the FAQ will cover you for the majority of your Blood Bowl needs, unless your needs are more teams. So 21 teams in the Blood Bowl rulebook. There are a bunch more teams that have been released by Games Workshop since then. The first thing to mention is the Teams of Legend PDF. Now this is available on their website for free for download, and I've put it in the links as well, and that includes rules for Tomb Kings, who are undead from kind of ancient Egypt vibe. High Elves, which are better armoured elves. We've got Chaos Dwarves in there, which are half dwarves, half goblins. Kind of excellent team. Vampires, which are just absolute carnage, and we love them as well. They're pretty good fun. And that's it, because the other Teams of Legend have now made it out in plastic. So those four teams that I've mentioned, you can get the rules for them, but you can't buy the models from Games Workshop. You'll have to go third party for that. And if there's a team in there that you like the rules of, we've probably got a top 5 for you of third party teams for it. So if you want to get a Tomb King team or a Chaos Dwarf team, we've got a top 5 Friday video that goes through the best options out there, so you can give that a watch and see which team takes your fancy. And then there are the Games Workshop expansion teams. So there is a Spike magazine, which is this book here, which is normally about a tenner, I think, probably about £10 or something like that. And it will cover the team rules. But they've done a really good job recently. If you go to Games Workshop and you buy a team, on the instructions will be the team rules. If you buy a star player from Forge World, on the instructions will be the rules. So they've done a really good job of making it accessible. So if you wanted to play Necromantic, or Khorne, or Norse, or the Spike 15, not Spike 14, Amazons that are going to be landing now, then actually picking up the box, you'll have the rules in there. But I cannot recommend the Spike magazines enough. There's always some cool backstory, there's some clever tactics, there's a good briefing of what the team does, some setups, and normally some inducements or a league special rule or something like that. They tend to cover all the star players that the team comes out with as well. So for example, in Spike 15, not 14, the Amazons one, they'll have the rules there for Boa Constrictor Estelle, and Glottal Stop as well. So it's a really good way to do it. Think of it like a codex for 40k or Warhammer back in the day. If you want to play Norse, pick up the Norse Spike. You can have all the rules, all the new star player rules, and it's just really fun to have and a really good read. But technically you don't need it because there are roster builders out there. We've got a ton of them on our website for various tournaments. All the rules are available, all the star player rules are available. If you want to get into Blood Bowl, the best thing to do is grab a roster builder, build some rosters, watch some videos. But pick up the Spike magazine for your team because it's really good fun. I've got Spike 12 up here, which is the Nobility and Black Orc one. All the rules for the teams are in the cool rulebook for that team, but again, it's some cool backstory, some cool fluff, some cool kind of extra rules that are just there to kind of build up the feel of that team. The Necromantic Spike 11, still my favourite one, has got all the rules for that. Spike 13's got all the rules for the Khorne team. Spike 14 has got all the rules for the Norse team. And Spike 15, which is coming out this weekend, has got all the rules for Amazons. Now, there's a couple of other things to mention that you can play with, and the first one is the NAF Slann team. So again, I've linked it in below, but Slann are an old race for Warhammer. You'll think of the big floaty frog dudes. Well, before there were the big floaty frog dudes, there were skinny, jumpy frog dudes. So they got made into the Kislev team on Blood Bowl 2. So they're all about jumping around, leap, pogo. It's a really fun additional team. The rules are available there. Most leagues, most tournaments will allow Slann in there as well. And it's only a matter of time before Games Workshop reimagines those. And I put there at the bottom Star Player downloads because Games Workshop also has a download page where you can get the PDF of the Star Player card basically for all of the Star Players that are being released. Really easy access. And it's all available online for free. But this is my favourite bit. You've got the core rules, you'll need that. If you want a team that's not in the core rule book, you can pick up the box and the Spike and it's really good fun. But then there's so many brilliant expansions. Death Zone is just one of the best books Games Workshop's ever done. There's so much in there. Now, I put optional but fun because a lot of leagues won't necessarily include a lot of this, and a lot of tournaments won't include a lot of these special rules as well. It will be detailed in your tournament rules pack. Basically, they like to, and I agree with this, keep tournaments not necessarily simple, but without having tons of rules. It keeps the games going at a reasonable pace, and also means that if you're just starting with Blood Bowl, it's a lot simpler than it could be if you added everything. But Death Zone has got the rules for Blood Bowl 7s, which is my favourite way to play, and if you've been watching the channel, you'll know that we love Blood Bowl 7s on here, and you can go and watch a ton of Blood Bowl 7s games here. Extra inducements, this is the thing I absolutely love. There are rules for giants, there are more wizards, there are drummers, there are runesmiths. There's a ton of extra stuff that you can take in your leagues as inducements and at some tournaments. We always allow giants because they're expensive, mighty, we're not overpowered, therefore they're a great addition to the game. So Death Zone has got a load of extra stuff. Then there's Dungeon Bowl. So Dungeon Bowl takes the carnage of Blood Bowl and places it underground in a dungeon run by wizards. You've got different college teams. It is a self-contained kind of game, but you can transition between Blood Bowl and Dungeon Bowl quite easily. Again, we've got a load of Dungeon Bowl videos on the channel. It's a different way to play Blood Bowl. There are treasure chests, teleporters, and more importantly, a dungeon. The core rules are exactly the same. You still block the same, you still throw the same, you still pick up the ball sometimes, and sometimes you don't. It's just a cool alternative. Very much like Sevens in that way, but a lot easier, no, a lot harder to get into. There are also the rules for college teams, which are mixed teams. It's brilliant fun. They're only really for Dungeon Bowl, but they are really good. There's a couple of extra bits as well to mention, which is the special play cards and pitches. The pitches that Games Workshop release have got special rules that are entirely optional. Most of the time you won't use them, but they're pretty good fun to just bust out every now and again. And then you've got the special play cards as well. If you pick those up, they are an inducement in the core rules, so you can absolutely take them. But because there's so many different packs, it's a little hard to follow. And lastly, there's the White Dwarf 466 referee rules, which are quite entertaining. The core set comes with 2 referee models. They don't do anything, but with these extra rules, you can have one on the pitch and they can run around and you can go and basically assault them, go and blitz them, take them off the pitch. Once the referee's gone, you can't get sent off for fouling. It's a great little fun addition, completely optional. It will add a good little element to your story. And again, we've got a Theory Thursday breaking that fully down. So that's everything that is available in Blood Bowl right now. I've probably missed something, but if I have, then it's probably only a little thing. What's coming up next? So Spike 15 and all the Amazon team, pitch, dice and star players will be landing this week, which is super exciting. We held back the September monthly meta because I was waiting on the release so I could put it in, and it took them 2 months. Anyway, Amazons are going to be here. So what's coming up next? Star player models I'm still missing. We've got Bryce the Slice, who is a undead chainsaw player whose rules are in Spike 11. We're still waiting on an official model for him. And from Spike 13 we've got Grashnak Blackhoof, who is a monster of a big guy. Strength 6, horns, frenzy. He's a brute. But we don't have a model for him either. So those are the only 2 models we are waiting for Blood Bowl. Everything else is there. Everything else has got a model. Every star player, every big guy. We are in such a good place when it comes to being able to go and buy what you want for Blood Bowl. The exception being the teams of legend, but actually there's a ton of third-party teams for those teams and for all the other teams. Blood Bowl is kind of in a new golden age where the accessibility is super low and there is so much choice. Now, there is a rumour about the next team, and that rumour that has been heard out there is that Amazons and vampires were tested against each other as part of the testing team. So, the rumour is that vampires will be the next team and that they will have a big guy. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's Games Workshop. We could see another expansion. We could see another Death Zone. We could see another Almanac at the end of the year. We could see a new team. We could see a new starter box. I don't know. We could see a completely new team. Come on, Squigs. And that's a really exciting place to be right now. I, like everybody else, want them to finish working on the teams of legend, bring back the vampires, the Tomb Kings, the Chaos Dwarves, and the High Elves, bring them back, give them the 2020 edition special treatment, and give them something really exciting. There's 4 teams to go. I don't know if Games Workshop are going to focus on those 4 teams or brew up some new teams, and quite frankly, I don't care, because more Blood Bowl is more better. Okay, so that's what's legal. Now we're going to move on to what's lethal. So a couple of shout-outs here. First of all of these results are registered NAF games. I mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but the NAF is a player association for Blood Bowl. You get your games logged, you can track your stats, and you get some dice when you re-up as well. So the first thing there is actually the NAF is a pretty cool organisation that really helps to grow Blood Bowl. Secondly, a shout out to Mike Davies, who, coincidentally, used to be the president of the NAF, but every month does a really good job of going through all the NAF games, getting the stats for them, and putting them in a really helpful Tableau, where I go along and steal the data for this episode. So the link to what Mike does is in the comments as well. And actually, as far as Blood Bowl goes, he's a bit of a treasure. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we are going to look at the last period of Blood Bowl, so between the last time we did a video and now, and see which teams have been performing the best. So we will eventually look to see which teams are the best overall and the most popular, but now we're going to start with teams 21 through 29 of the best performing teams over the last period. And starting at the bottom at 29, we've got Goblins. So during the last couple of months, Goblins have got worse. They've dropped 4 spots compared to the previous period. 37% win rate is the lowest thing we've seen in Blood Bowl for a while. 28 and 27 is Ogres and Black Orcs, again taking a bit of a dip there to 38% win rate. This is some of the lowest win rates we've seen in a little while. 26th, we've got Snotlings, who are another tier 3 team. So 3 tier 3 teams in the bottom 4 tier 4 teams at 40 or less %, which again is really, really, really low. We tend to see most teams sitting between 45 and 55. And at 44% win rate, we've got Imperial Nobility, who've dropped 5 spots since the last period. And Halflings, the last of the tier 3 teams. There we go, all in the bottom 6. We've got all tier 3 teams, along with Black Orcs and Imperial Nobility. Now, a huge element that leads towards that, this is tournaments, so there's an availability issue there as well. So the tier 3 teams are always going to be tier 3. Sometimes they do really well, sometimes they don't do really well. We saw Goblins take our last tournament, because of a spate of Bomber Dribble Snot Carnage, which was great fun, but they've not done so well over the last period. Imperial Nobility and Black Orc, we tend to see a lot of beginner coaches bringing them to their first few tournaments because they come in the starter set. So we saw this in the last edition with Humans and Orcs. There is a spate of those teams, so actually you tend to get the newer coaches starting there, who, you know, sometimes, but definitely not always, can have a bit of a lower win percentage. So I'm not massively surprised or perturbed by that. I'm running Black Orcs at the moment, and they are a bit of a powerhouse, and Nobility, when they get cooking, are really good as well. So those guys are the bottom 6. And then in 23rd spot with 46% win rate, we've got Humans. And then Chaos Renegades have dropped massively over the last period, which is such a shame. I love Renegades. Down to 47% win rate at 22nd. And 21st, we've got Nurgle, who have had a bit of a good sesh. They've moved up 7 spots into 21st place. Now, these are all Tier 2 and Tier 3 teams. Nurgle are quite challenging. Chaos Renegades can be swingy. They can do really well, and other times they can do really poorly because they kind of lean into the fact that they've got 3 big guys. So actually, they were 12th last period. Now they've dropped down to 22nd. It's not unexpected. And Humans, with the proliferation of those teams, it tends to kind of sit around the mid zone. And as we move into the mid table here, 20th goes to Khorne, 19 goes to Chaos, and 18 goes to Norse, all sitting at 48%, as is the Old World Alliance. So Khorne have dropped 9 spots, Chaos have bounced up 8 spots, Norse have bounced up 3 spots, and Old World Alliance, who quite frankly were punching in the last period in the top 5, have dropped 13 places down to 17. So Norse is the first Tier 1 team that we're seeing on here, and again, they've just been reimagined. So the last few months worth of Norse will be people playing the new version of the roster, and you know what, there's going to be a lot of trial and error in that because it is a brand new team really, that the core of it is the same, and we're going to see this with Amazons. But the way you play Norse has changed, and the way you're going to play Amazons has basically changed. So they kind of hit the deck as new teams. So Norse being 18, working their way up from 21 in the last edition, in the last period, it makes a lot of sense. And 300 games in the last month or so is quite realistic when it comes to popularity. See, Khorne there, 269, Chaos less than 200, and Old World Alliance 120. Old World Alliance done a really good job, but remember, this is still 48%, so this is only a little bit more of a loss than the win ratio, basically, which is an excellent point of balance. Bang on the middle of balance is Vampires there, who've bounced up 3 spots to 16, 15% win rate, but only 65 games played. This is what we're talking about when we look at our the teams of legend. They are less easy to get access to, and there is definitely this cloud of ambiguity around them because Games Workshop will be rebuilding them, and therefore the roster will change a bit. They may lose a positional, they may gain a positional. Vampires aren't going to lose a positional. They only have one positional, and it is Vampires. So the likelihood of them losing Vampires, limited. The likelihood of them getting different ones, very, very, very high. So absolutely love that Vampires are sitting slap bang in the middle of the table here, both from a win percentage and a placement point. We've got some 51%ers here, Lizardmen and Elven Union, both dropping a few spots apiece, but sitting there at 51%. Lizards, 457, a ton of games played. Elven Union, even less than OWA. That might be due to elves being a little bit more challenging in this edition when it comes to... There tends to be a leaning towards speed agility rather than throwing agility, and elves tend to have a nice bit of throwing agility. Don't get me wrong, EU can be an absolute powerhouse, and lizards are fantastic, and quite frankly, 51% win rate is pretty awesome. As we move up to 13 and 12 and 11, we've got Necromantic up 1 spot, 13th place. Chaos Dwarf taking a bit of a beating this period, down to 12, 5 spots. And Skaven almost into the top 10 there, 11th spot, all sitting at 52% win rate. And out of those teams, Necro 340 games, Chaos Dwarves 320 games, and Skaven 285 games. A very reasonable amount of games played, and a very reasonable win percentage at 52. Which takes us into the top 10 competitive Blood Bowl teams from the last period. And number 10, we've got Amazons, who've dropped 9 spots down to 10th. Their win percentage down to 53% and 222 games played. Now, Amazons, as you know, are being reimagined right now. So this is going to transition over probably the rest of the year now, where there will be some tournaments that are now both rosters at the moment, or just the old roster, before we kind of see the spate of new rosters hitting in probably November time and then December. So we really won't get to grips with how the new Amazon roster is performing until we go into the new year, which is awesome. But I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see the Amazon win percentage drop over the next couple of months because of two things. One, new roster, new playstyle, new players picking them up, so it's all going to be very new. And secondly, we know that Amazons are going to be popular because it's the shiny new thing. Therefore, we'll probably see an uptick in tackle-heavy teams, either from a roster building point of view, so Orcs are a pretty good ones with a cheeky bit of tackle here and there, as are Dwarves and Chaos Dwarves. So I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see those teams take a bit of a win spike while Amazons kind of hit that wall, because as far as the meta is concerned, tackle is a brilliant skill to have at the moment, especially with the Amazon all dodge team landing. And as we progress through our top 10, you'll kind of see why. So 10th spot goes to Amazons. Up one spot is Slann, my boys. So the unofficial team, the only one left, is an absolute brilliant fun house of a team. You can be space frogs, you can be kind of Kislev Russian style circus jumpy people, it doesn't matter. Most of the time you're going to be rolling a 3+ without a reroll to disappear from one square and appear 2 squares elsewhere. I love it. The team's great, and they have a Croxagore. The catches are super fun. It is a really fun roster, and I love seeing not only them in the top 10, but nearly 200 games played. So Slann, officially more popular than Elven Union. And they're good fun in 7s as well. So they are up one spot to 9. Staying in 8th place is Dwarves. So we talked about tackle being pretty useful. Dwarves are doing pretty well. 400 games played in the last period and sitting at a very, very cushy 54% win rate. Now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 teams all sitting there at 55%. So we'll do them all in one go. Missed that box. We've got Orcs up 16 places into 7, Wood Elves up 11 places into 6, Dark Elves and Tomb Kings both up 1 to 5 and 4 respectively, all sitting with a 55% win rate. We talked about Orcs and Humans being popular because they were in the starter set. Well, Orcs have actually got a really potent roster with a few skills, so actually seeing them boost up to 55 with nearly 600 games is fantastic to see. Wood Elves, Dark Elves doing that edge thing. Dark Elf there, 310 games. Wood Elves nearly 200 games. I mean, they're creeping up. Wood Elves tend to bounce up and down, and that can be based on rule sets for tournaments that are going on about. And Tomb Kings there have been consistently winning, which is fantastic. And I think we know why. And the reason for that is there is this little triangle of dodge, tackle, and the other guys. And as we progress through the list, it will become a little bit more apparent. Number 3 is going to be Undead this period, which have jumped up 19 spots. They were having a terrible time last time. I think they dropped down to 47% win rate in that period. They're back up now, 57%, jumped up even with 500 games. So Undead doing a brilliant job. High Elves creeping up one spot back to number 2 at 58% win rate, and Underworld remaining, well, that's not fair, they've returned to the top at 61% win rate for the last period. 235 games for Underworld, 203 games for High Elves. Now, you've got Undead, you've got Tomb Kings in that spot. High Elves as well fit into this category. All 3 of those teams do not need to rely on dodge, Undead and Tomb Kings particularly. So where you've got an environment where Underworld are the boogeyman, okay, you've got Hackflem, you've got Underworld, you've got the potential of the fast scoring elf teams, but realistically it's Underworld, and there is a spate of tier 3 teams because they can take Hackflem and Stars. It makes tackle such a juicy skill to take, and that's where we see Dwarves doing so well at 54% there. They've got that integral tackle. So those teams that can perform their game plan without having to give up too many kind of juicy tackle blocks, the High Elves are a great example of this. They have no integral dodge on the roster. They're tier 1, so they don't tend to get a lot of skills, and because of the way that tournament builds kind of work for High Elves, one of those skills tends to go towards leader in some cases, so they don't even have a lot of dodge in a lot of places. So you may have a High Elf team with maybe 2 dodge pieces on. You can avoid tackle when you've only got 2 pieces of dodge. You can still play your elf game, and they've got good enough armor to survive that. Undead, Tomb Kings, no dodge, not even a little bit. Tomb Kings just ignore everybody and just do their 4+ edge thing. I've got 4 strength 5 guys, and everybody else is maybe picking up the ball. Once I've got the ball, you cannot stop me. And they've got a good star player in Wilhelm Chaney to be able to be a nice fast scoring threat as well. And the roster's cheap enough to mostly be able to afford him. And Undead are kind of similar in that way. They're a strong mid-range team. They've got a cheeky little bit of dodge, but actually they tend to be more on the bash side than the dash side. And actually that means they can go toe-to-toe with that tackle kind of counter to the dodge piece. So it's really interesting to see how the teams are performing. But Underworld are still storming there at a 61% win rate. We saw them drop off a little bit, but they are still the most tier 1 team in Blood Bowl. Okay, so that's how well the teams did. Now we're going to look at the top 10 most played teams in the last period as well. We're not going to do the full whack, that seems unnecessary. But in at 10th spot is Skaven, down 5 places with a win rate of 52% and 285 games played. Norse in the top 10, also down a spot there, 300 games for them. Up 3 spots is Dark Elves, so Dark Elves are getting more popular there, 300 games played. Chaos Dwarves sitting in the top 10 most played teams. Everything I just said about tackle teams really kind of fits in here with the Chorf roster. Nice 52% win rate there. I think they're sitting just outside the top 10, aren't they? But they're still not doing bad. Necromantic up 3 spots, getting very popular at the moment. And I wonder if we'll see more Necro teams being played because it's going into Halloween. Humans, we talked about humans. They've dropped a spot in the popularity, but performing nicely. Dwarves, again, we've got that tackle spam, I guess, is probably the kind of way I would describe the competitive meta at the moment. You've got those with tackle who are going after the people who have dodge. Number 3, Lizards, 457 games. Undead at 2. And Orcs at number 1. And I've got to say, I think the award for team this month goes to Orcs, who've managed a 55% win rate with 560 games played. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, they stayed there. They were number 1 spot last time. So if you are going to a tournament, you can look at this and see what the most popular teams are going to be. Orcs, Undead, Lizards, Dwarf, Human, Necromantic, Chaos Dwarves, Dark Elf, Norse, and Skaven. Interestingly, Underworld are not in that top 10 piece. Where are Underworld sitting at the moment? They are sitting at 13th, which is reasonable and kind of fits in kind of with the creepy theme. So you can expect to see the majority of these teams. It's really interesting that Underworld are performing so well without being in the top 10 most popular teams. That's Underworld, I guess. And with those movers and shakers, it only seems sensible that we check in on our permanent top 10. So this is all-time win percentage. Elven Union down a spot, Slann up a spot. Those two are kind of competing at the moment. Slann there with 900 games, Elven Union with nearly 1300. We got Wood Elves at 8, 1400 games played. Chaos Dwarves and Dwarf at 7 and 6, 53% overall win rate, 6,000 games played, 6,500 games played basically between those two teams. Dark Elves creeping up the ranking overall to 53%, nearly 3,000 games for those. Tomb Kings at 4, Amazons at 3, High Elves at 2, and Underworld at 1, all staying put in their all-time rankings there. 60% win rate from Underworld. It was 65 at the dawn of Blood Bowl 2020, so it is slowly creeping down into that into the Goldilocks zone of 45 to 55%, but sitting just outside that, you've got High Elves as well at 57. Now, High Elves being the second most winning team in Blood Bowl from a competitive point of view, with Amazons and Tomb Kings there as well. At some point, we know that they're going to get reimagined by Games Workshop. They're going to get re-released. They're going to get redesigned. So it's kind of, we're going to see them kind of live out their dreams. Amazons are going to drop with the new release. I think that I do not believe the new roster is as good as the old roster, but it's not far off. But there's still going to be that learning curve, so Amazons are going to drop a couple of percentage, I think, in the next few months, and drop kind of down to, they'll probably still remain in the top 10. At some point, the Tomb Kings and the High Elves will also get rebuilt, and it will be really interesting to see what they do there. I wouldn't be surprised if Games Workshop didn't kind of do something. They've already moved High Elves up to tier 1 from tier 2, the same with Underworld, so it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't give a little bit of a nerf to the High Elf roster, which is really interesting because the High Elf roster is pretty vanilla. It's Elven Union, it's humans with Edge 2+, basically. and better strength. And I think they might just increase the price of a few things. We saw the team reroll increase with the new Amazon team. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see that with High Elves as well. Be interesting to explain why. But also from a theme point of view, I think the High Elf roster might get quite a heavy reshuffle. It's very similar to the Elven Union roster at the moment. So I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't kind of take away either the heavy throwing angle and make EU the throwing team, and maybe make High Elves more of a combat focused elf team, because we don't have that. We've got Dark Elves, but actually there's a few elements there of High Elves that would befit that. You know, the Lion Warriors of Krace. What if we see some Strength 4 Edge 2+ pieces? It's a terrifying prospect, but basically Amazons have changed, they're going to drop. Tomb Kings and High Elves, Games Workshop are probably coming for you next. Okay, so I think we've succinctly covered what's legal and what's lethal. Underworld are still doing brilliantly, as are High Elves. Amazons are doing well, but they're likely to drop. So if you're going to a tournament, quite frankly, in Blood Bowl, it doesn't massively matter. The win rates, sure, there's definitely things to track, and there are definitely teams that do better in certain formats. But the beautiful thing about this game is that any team can beat any other team at any point. Nothing is a gimme, and even the best team on that list loses 4 times out of 10. When you kind of frame it that way, there is no auto win. Underworld are infinitely beatable. High Elves are infinitely beatable. They're just performing really well at the moment, and there are some good coaches out there that know how to pilot them. So take the team you love, take the team you've painted, take the team you want to explore, and enjoy it, because you will always have a chance to win. There is no write-offs in Blood Bowl. Until they allow Hackflem and Griff on the same team, and then really I wouldn't bother. But until that point, any given day. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know in the comments what team you're taking to a tournament soon and how you feel about these rankings, and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube Members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.